This is not like a presentation. This is meant to be a discussion. So I hope mostly other people will be talking and not me. I want to get some inputs on the tools that we use for kernel development and how they can be improved. I can't move the presentation. Interesting. Yeah, that's a new one. Oh.
Which are you going to talk? I'm going to ask him a question. You don't have to wait.
Yeah.
So I'm here for the first minutes of the discussion. If there are any GCC-related tools questions, then I'm here to eventually give answers. So this, if there are none, I'm going to leave the room.
I don't have any topics prepared related to GCC, but if anyone has some comments on GCC related to kernel, feel free.
GCC version the 16. So currently GCC 13 or 14? So as far as I know, the GCC 16. The 16.0 will be using GCC 13 for building the kernel, and also customers will use that to build modules. The same will be true for 16.1. At 16. And for 16.0 and 16.1, the customer's GCC will be actually GCC 15. And with 16.2, the customer GCC will switch to GCC 17. I would hope that eventually we get the kernel that gets updated at 16.2 time also to use that GCC 17. Now you know in advance for long enough that maybe we can decouple do not have the two different GCCs for 16.2. But that's far in the future. Who knows what happens with 16. Whatever in 2 years.
Like related to that, this is enabled by a spec file modification that uses a specific GCC version, not the default version, which will be GCC 15 for C16. So we can, if and when we decide, arbitrarily change the GCC version that is used for compiling the kernel.
Somebody else? Okay, then a somewhat compiler-related question. What are we going to do if the first real Rust driver that we are supposed to take or forced to take arrives? Are we going to define an official Rust compiler for that purpose, or how is this supposed to work?
That's for some feature discussion about that when it arrives. I don't have an answer for that. We have Rust in SLI available, so we can build Rust drivers if we wanted to. But how will that be with support and lifecycle and things like that? That's an open question.
For now, we're even throwing away Git fixes for Rust. So
yes, because
we are not ready in any respect.
Rust is not enabled, so that's the reason why we are throwing out Git fixes for it. Once it's enabled, then we need to reconsider if we need those fixes, if it gets enabled.
I think it also depends on whether the GCC Rust frontend is available or not. Otherwise, we would have to complete Rust stuff. So dragging into just for the Rust kernel modules, and maybe that won't fly.
Like, I don't think that it is a technical problem. We have Rust compiler available. It is used for some core packages already, so it's not a problem if we wanted to build Rust drivers in the kernel, like from a technical point of view.
Because as far as I know, that Linux stuff has very specific needs about the Rust toolchain.
Yeah, the Tumbleweed work.
Some Rust in 3 is one thing. Being able to use it to build that stuff, that's something different.
Yes, I tried that, and old version, for example, /15 based one doesn't work. But the Tumbleweed version, I think it's still it's already new enough. But well, it's not. That Rust stuff is not stable enough. At least for our kernel is based on 6.12. So
I think there is a minimum version requirement. So if you have Rust that is older than that, you can't build it. But for 3.16, that shouldn't be a problem, at least for now. Maybe the version that is required will be like changed in the kernel upstream. But I don't think that we have currently any feature request for enabling drivers that do need Rust. So it's at the very least, there is the graphic driver for the Mac hardware. Like the ARM Macs use some graphic driver that is written in Rust, and if you want to have accelerated graphics there, you need Rust. And because there is now infrastructure in the kernel for writing Rust drivers, it's likely that more will appear over time, and it can happen that it will be driver for some piece of hardware that we actually want to enable eventually. Yes, and there is another related problem, and that is that mod versions don't work with Rust so far. There is some work ongoing to enable that. I think that next release of Kmod should support Rust modules, but the current one doesn't. So it's a future, but potentially not very far off future, depending on how things go.
At least from Slack's point of view, it's a very distant thing. Similar to maybe. Okay, there's no other GCC question. I guess we can let you go. And I have a question regarding scripts branch and how it doesn't really work and what to do about that. So first, why do I think that it doesn't work? It's largely inconsistent when you look at different branches, how they are merging scripts branch, which tends to cause problems, especially with scripts where we rely on them being up to date, because they might be providing wrong answers for something that it's considered to be authoritative, like check kernel fix, for example. So,
well, that is the topic I wanted to talk about. I think that the scripts branch is mainly useful for scripts that are tightly like coupled with the content of the Git repository. So you need the specific version of the script for the specific version of the source that you have. And it's kind of useful for distributing small scripts that are not changing a lot. But for the CD things, I think it would be much more productive to put the scripts into OBS and install them as a package.
that's certainly one of the options.
Like if there are other options, maybe, but I think that this is one of the standard ways that we use for distributing software. People are used to it, know how to work with it. So for things that change often, are big or something like that, it makes sense to use the OBS as the way of distribution.
Or we could split those CVE-related scripts into a separate branch so that that branch could be merged even into LTSS products, but we wouldn't have to merge the whole scripts.
We can merge the scripts into LTSS products. There is no problem with that, but people don't do it. That's
Yeah,
the problem.
that's the main problem. That's something that can be addressed reasonably easy by auto creating pull requests for all the maintained branches. So, there is a
But the idea was that if there was a specific branch that would be used for stuff that does not affect the resulting builds, the result of the build, then people would be perhaps less reluctant to merge this branch.
And this,
even into all
this is scripts branch. This what you mentioned, that's actually the purpose of scripts branch. But maybe you are referring to packaging branch, which is
RPM.
I'm not sure if we really want to add in scripts branch anything that affects the output.
We have the OBS uploader, which affects how the package is built in OBS, but generally you do want to merge updates to this uploader script because it adapts to changes in OBS. And if you don't have the recent scripts, then you potentially can't upload to OBS at all.
Yeah, that brings me to a question. What is an actual example of a script that is branch specific?
Like there are scripts that are tied to the like there is some overlap between the scripts that are used that are in the scripts branch and the scripts that are in the packaging branch. There is some code sharing between these two. And for example, I think tar up is like somehow interrelated with the RPM script. So there is potential for problems if we remove this script. And it's also like tightly coupled to the content of the repository and doesn't like stand on its own.
I'm not sure I have heard the actual script that is branch specific from your answer, because to me it seems like there's none. And that means that whatever we have in the scripts branch, at least I regularly merge that into branches I'm maintaining, and that includes 11SP4 LTSS. And so far, I haven't encountered any actual problem. So maybe we used to have something like that in the past. I don't think that we do anymore. And while I do agree with you that there are some things that would be better to be packaged, I'm slightly worried that the ad hoc nature of our workflows that are evolving all the time are much better suited to have something that is local to the kernel tree rather than pollute the global distribution namespace with something that probably doesn't make much sense.
We have a patched version of Quilt in kernel tools because we use that patched version of Quilt for some kernel workflows. And here we are speaking about things that are unique to the kernel workflow, so they don't really pollute the general package space. They just add more features that are only useful for kernel developers, or like the package could potentially be used in some other context, but doesn't support it.
Yeah, like check kernel fixes the very same example.
Yes. And I think that if updating the package is something that people are more familiar and more comfortable with than merging the scripts branch into their tree when they want to work on CVEs.
it would make more sense just to
Yes.
Can you daily outwards to at least at all splits, active branches that really, and not that say, not all that, not two old branches, but more major branches. Right. Yeah, we want that's it. Yeah, higher error rate than this version.
Like even if you merge scripts automatically into the branches, which should work, like it's done already for vanilla and Linux Next branch, and like it's people are often working with old revision of the tree. Like if you look at the pull requests, often people don't base it on the tip of the branch or like recent state of the branch, but often they use some very old revision.
No, they don't. No.
Like
If you think about that, then you just merge that. If you just don't, then it happened to me several times that I've seen somebody using check kernel fix from an old branch that hasn't merged any recent fixes, and that led to misleading answers they were seeing. So that's why I'm really concerned about that. And auto merging certainly is not bulletproof, but at least this would force maintainers to get up-to-date state at least reasonably well. So is something like that possible?
yes, it's possible.
Thank you.
Okay, if I may say something. Tale of woe. If you really want to build something really old, you will find it's not possible, exactly because we do have the scripts merged into the kernel tree. Anything really old just doesn't work with OBS anymore. I would say would be far superior to have a real RPM for the scripts.
I think you're probably more about the packaging.
Yep.
That's actually the scripts branch, because if you check out an old revision of 3, it doesn't have support for the SSH authentication in OBS, and you can't upload to OBS because that's a change.
We're breaking bisectability that way. Yeah.
So yes, I think that unbundling things from the scripts branch would be useful. Like there is a lot of stuff, not all of it makes sense to package or might be difficult to package, but there is also stuff that can be packaged because it doesn't really rely too much on the other things in the kernel tree, and packaging this separately would make the workflows easier. Like there is, for example, the Bugzilla, the Python Bugzilla library, which we carry in kernel source, and we can't use the Python Bugzilla library that is in the distribution because we have local modifications to this library. So it would be nice to work with the maintainer of this to determine if our changes can be like applied upstream, perhaps as an option, but yeah, it is work, and it is work in a field that is unfamiliar to us as kernel developers, like Python packaging. And then you would have less stuff in this because you could rely on the library that is provided from the distribution.
Don't kill me, but what if I'm not using OpenSUSE for developing? I mean, there is no rule that I have to use OpenSUSE products for building the kernel.
Like if this is merged into the Stream package, then you would get the same functionality even on Ubuntu or whatever you use. But yes, there is a lot of steps involved, and we are not very like proficient in doing this with Python packages. And yes, you can also package these modified tools for your distribution of choice. OBS supports building different distributions, so you might be even able to do that in OBS. But because very few people are familiar with building packages for distributions other than OpenSUSE in OBS, then might be up to you.
Source code of OBS to figure out what to do. There is no documentation whatsoever.
Yes, there is very little documentation on using Debian packages. And there are some example Debian packages in base system which you could use as a reference, but yes, the documentation is bad.
But if you want to have a packages created from Git repository for the different distributions, you have with a source how it's searches.
That's exactly the packages in base system which provide OBS related tools for Debian-based distributions. So yes, there is an example how it can work, but it's undocumented. Like initially, it didn't just work because some really old branches had merge conflicts with scripts like the 3.11 based. But at some point, I did resolve the conflicts, and now it should auto merge.
No, I don't having a question. I don't having question. I just didn't hear you, from the back. So
Should I repeat?
No.
Yes, and there is another thing that like there are questions about it, but we didn't have any kind of conclusion, and that's how we do track the KABI references. Like there are a lot of like talks about what KABI is, why we track it, but this is about the practical side. Like there are actually two KABI checks. One happens when the kernel is built with RPM build. Like there are KABI reference files packed with the kernel sources, and when the when the kernel RPM is built, the KABI of the build kernel is compared with the reference files, and there is some configuration file that tells the the script that does the comparison which symbols can be like ignored and which should be checked. And there is another check that is done using basically the same script, but it's done in kbuild. And in kbuild, when these reference files exist, kbuild completely ignores them. But when it's building a branch that the user pushed, it compares about the against the KABI reference files that are the result of building the tip of the product branch to which this branch is expected to be merged, like on which the branch is based. And there is a lot of confusion around this, because the ways this is done, they are different. And this is done this way for a long time. I didn't design it. I only inherited the implementation. And I'm not sure if it's great to do it this way or if we should change it. Like there is probably some reason to do this, because there is also the thing that theoretically the reference files should be updated from maintenance updates, but in practice it's rarely done. So the symbols that are added throughout the product development after GA, like when some new features are enabled, or when some subsystems that were initially built in become modularized, these are not tracked typically, because nobody updates the KABI files. And like there is also some like disagreement about how this should be done, and if the KABI references should be updated after each maintenance update, or if the GA are good enough. And related to this, because there is some lag between submitting the maintenance update and the release from which the new reference files are obtained, then in the meantime, especially during RC, the KABI may intentionally change. So comparing against the reference files from the maintenance update may not be like the desired thing. And that might be the reason why the kbuild check is not against the reference files, but against the actual results of the previous build.
Yeah, I think that even the update of the KABI sim version symbols or references is documented, and branch maintenance how to. However, as you said, updating that and pushing to the pull request, that will be declined by kbuild. So we can just push, import, and push by skipping the kbuild test in that case. So that is a kind of ugly standard procedure for branch maintainers. Yeah. And yeah, of course, it'd be great if it can be fixed and kbuild side, but this might have some side effects. So as you described, so it might be that that's by design. But yeah, in general, so generally speaking, yes, KBI's symbol reference update is is possible, and it has been done, but not regularly so often because we are lazy.
Yes, I think it's confusing that there are these two kind of checks, and one of them uses some implicit references generated inside cable. So I think it would be simpler to always check against the reference files that are stored in kernel source repository by the branch maintainer, because the branch maintainer knows what they are doing. So they base the reference files on some snapshot or whatever, and they know that there's soft KABI freeze, so they accept something that breaks KABI, so they know what they can expect. And then they can wait when there is a new next snapshot and update the KABI references as necessary. So that's my opinion. I think one check or one references, those that are in kernel source repository, would be enough. That's what I think.
Well, the thing is that when you accept a pull request that changes the ABI, then with the current implementation, it automatically updates the test so that it tests against this changed ABI. Whereas if you test it against the stored file, you would have to update the files with any pull request that changes ABI. Otherwise, any future pull request would fail because of ABI difference.
I'm not sure I can imagine it.
Like you accept a pull request that changes the ABI, and you are testing against the reference files that are stored in the sources, and you didn't update them. Now, any future pull request that is based on this changed ABI will fail because...
Yes, yes, that's what I meant, that the branch maintainer knows what they are doing.
I don't understand the problem.
Like, it's not a problem like that is unsolvable. It's a change in workflow. Whenever you are changing ABI, you also need to update the files yourself by hand. Otherwise, future pull requests will fail.
Which is desirable behavior. No, because we are not supposed to be breaking KABI. So if you are doing that without knowing what you're doing, then you are probably doing something wrong. And if you know what you're doing, then you just update those references. Is that what you're saying, Michal? Because that makes a lot of sense to me from the workflow point of view, and also from easy to follow process kind of rules.
Yes, the cases when the ABI is broken intentionally are really rare, so it's probably not too hard to also update the references when the changes are implemented.
Yeah, essentially references should be frozen at the KBI freeze, and since then they shouldn't be updated ever unless there are exceptional cases like disabling a driver might change references, right? So those are pretty much deliberate actions where you know that you're changing KBI.
The problem here is that the reason why we need to update KBI reference file is that changes we do may not change existing KABI, but they can extend it. They can add new symbols that need to be protected, but didn't exist before. Some of the patches that we add, for example, add new exported functions. And we have to fix the signatures of those. That's also the reason why we, or at least that was the practice when I was maintaining SLE 15SP2 branch. The practice was that you should update KABI after each maintenance update, because before those changes were lived only in our kernel source repository. We could change the signatures of these new symbols. But once we released the update, we had to guarantee that those signatures won't change anymore.
Where is that requirement coming from? Because if we are adding a new symbol, then is there any guarantee about KBI for those new symbols? Can we expect that there will be a driver that would have a hard dependency on a particular maintenance update onwards?
The risk would be that there could be a third-party module built against one maintenance update that would break with next maintenance update.
But do we provide any kind of guarantee for drivers that are built against some?
I believe we should. Because that's why we are trying to protect KB or preserve KB.
Yeah, we are protecting KBI when somebody builds a driver against GA, that it works throughout the whole lifetime of that product. So far, I haven't heard about any driver having a hard requirement, because such a driver wouldn't work with GA kernel if it's relying on a symbol that it's not present there for obvious reasons. But isn't that something that we're inventing, a problem that doesn't exist?
The problem is that it cannot knowingly, doesn't have to knowingly depend on such symbol, because that symbol can be used in some inline function, for example. So that you call that inline function that in newer kernel calls some function which did not exist before because it existed, for example, under other name or.
And also there is a case where new KMP or such new package we added after GA version through echo process or whatever. Then this package is built upon update kernel because it's checked in not in GA project but in update project.
Those were built against GA.
But we don't.
If we put in an update project, then it's based on update.
But also we can rebuild the KMP when it fails to load. But yes, that usually requires that somebody complains. It's not done automatically.
Yeah, it must be a very corner case, and I don't know, it really happened so far. But yeah, in theory, really theoretical things.
And there was a case that in 315 SP3 or SP2, there was a security mitigation implemented in the first maintenance update, and everything built against the first maintenance update required some new symbol which was not in the GA kernel. So these things do happen, but yeah, they shouldn't, but they do.
If something like that happens, that sounds like a very corner case. Should we really base our regular workflow on those potential exceptions, or do we rely on maintainers to update those KBI files in those very specific cases and have a much simpler workflow? That's my question. Aren't we inventing theoretical problems just to make our lives much harder and for potentially very weak reason?
That's open to discussion.
Really much harder. I've been maintaining 315 SP2 and it was just matter of running one script after each maintenance update and then pushing that to the result into the repository.
And remembering.
Not really. I didn't feel like it's making my life. It was making my life much harder. Things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we can accept this goal of pinning also the new symbols to their KBI signature. And the thing of running a script after each maintenance audit, this I think what can be automated, that you can have some 4 next branches created by some cron job that updates the reference files based on those released RPMs. But still the goal would be that the only reference would be the one in the kernel source repository, that there will be nothing hidden in k-build caches or whenever.
Right.
If we are considering kernel cases, what happens if we have to revoke a maintenance update?
I don't think you would need to do anything special. Like you can ignore the problem and it would work because
if we guarantee added symbols, then we can never revoke a maintenance update that adds a symbol.
It will be again in the next maintenance update after that.
Not if the reason for revoking that update is the very change. This is a problematic thing.
Well, that's usually with the simple updates. So it's done after the release. Yeah, and then we import. That's a usual pattern. But of course, we can also revert the changes too. It's just that you can change the file and force push, and that's all.
Yeah, and I think the consequence of what Takashi mentions is that actually the customers should not be able to build any modules against a revoked maintenance update.
I think we're inventing more and more things that simply do not matter.
As far as I am concerned, the KABI is what we release at GA.
Right. So rather than inventing new corner cases, can we agree that we just rely on a single set of KBI files inside a branch?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, then we need to update the documentation too.
Well, we need to first implement the feature.
Yeah, but the update of the symbol should be still allowed in the like corner case. We actually hitch that's the security things, for example. Yeah, that can happen.
Oh, yeah, I think Git fixes was discussed in separate talk. So I think that that topic was exhausted already.
We have discussed that or touched that on mailing list without any conclusion, but I would like to resurrect the discussion about limiting some of the regeneratable metadata from our patches, like patch mainline. That is very often wrong, as Sean has discovered in one of those branches. So there was no conclusion for that. Somebody found that nice to have as a visual, but is that something that we can get rid of?
Okay, if somebody can check whether it's correct. He didn't do that by hand, so it's automatic.
Yes, and it's much simpler to drop all those entries rather than go and check them and fix them. Also, it's less work to add them for any new backports. So
apparently some people want them. So
for reasons which are,
I don't know.
Okay.
I could live without them.
But it's convenient. Just creating the kernel version also from the patch mainline, you can figure out which patches could be relevant or not.
Yeah, we are often checking whether something which is in OpenQA, it's actually by the Git of the kernel sources and the content of mainline patches, because we have that in LTP. There is some new fix from mainline, so you can remove that, but it helps us.
yeah, we can give you a script that will tell you that information in essentially no time. The question is whether you want to rely on something that is potentially incorrect.
We hoped it's correct.
And it's not. So
Let's drop it.
So can we agree on, I will be more than happy to do that for all the maintained branches. I love negative diff stats as well. So,
so what exactly do you propose? Do you propose to drop patch mainline completely? That would lose a lot of information because there are other values. So
yes, all those values that are referencing Linux tag.
So we should drop patch mainline from patches which have git commit
Yes.
with commit
Right,
present
right.
in mainline.
Yeah, I believe that
Yeah.
in that discussion.
Or maybe
yeah,
replace with something like patch mainline yes or
right.
like that.
Yeah, I believe that I even have made the change for the checker script that
Yeah,
is
that-
enforcing that. So
Sure.
I might need some help with that because I'm not really sure that I have done that properly because I'm not really all that fluent with that scripting. But I will be more than happy to drop those particular entries because then there are patch mainline no
And probably
never.
there are some
Yeah.
there is the tag patches or whatever is the name script
Yeah.
that creates those that they will, yeah.
Yes, there is the thing that you can produce the patch mainline in almost no time for one patch, but you can't produce it in almost no time for 20,000 patches. Like it's realistic to have a script that checks this on newly added patches or even corrects it on existing patches, like in some time that is not catastrophic. But if you want to know from which kernel version the patch is and you don't have the information in the patch file, you don't if you want to have the information for all patch files, then that's definitely not going to be in no time.
And just a practical note, this is another reason why we would really want to merge scripts into all branches, including all LTSS ones. Because if we have to update some of the scripts for this change, we want that change to propagate also into all the LTSS branches.
Now I'm confused again. Are we okay with dropping that or not? Because it seems like anytime we're inching closer to a conclusion, we are coming up with a yet another theoretical potential use case that probably nobody never saw, like 20,000 of patch man lines to be taken too long time. When are you going to do that?
Yes. If you check the kernel version of each patch, then it takes long.
Yes, right. But when are we going to do that except for...
Regularly just wrapping the kernel version.
Yeah, tell us more. Because if...
Suppose that you have a patch in the mainline or a stable version, stable tag with the version numbers. Then you need to figure out which patches should be relevant to us. Or yeah. So another point is, for example, when you take a look at the patch series.conf and you want to figure out which point is which version, then by just gripping, it's pretty easy. It's sorted, but then you can point out from here starts version 5.13 or something like that.
Takashi, if that is your reason, the serious.conf file is insufficiently commented, then you should just add a line, here begins version such and such.
Yeah.
Or it will be generated by series insert or series or...
Yeah. So I can deal with that after dropping that by just I can generate by myself and keep my own database. So it's no problem at all for me. But for example, I just commented that as my use cases. Yeah. So there are might be rare, but there are.
I actually use the tag too when I'm upgrading stable branch when merging master branch. But yeah, I can live with that because I need that only for I don't think it is much more than 10 patches. So this just
That's
takes 10
similar
seconds
to
or
master branch where I usually when I update to RC1, I drop all patches which are hard, but it's usually something like 4 or 5 patches. So not that. And mostly I have to check also others as well by audit ID because not all have updated upstream information.
exactly. It's not real reliable there.
So I have to rely on git commit anyway. Yeah. So there are use cases, but most of them at least just need updating some scripts.
So we are dropping it, right?
I'll have all big questions. Update or question.
Just to finish this, I'm using export patch and this is doing it's doing it automatically for me, so this have to be fixed.
I guess series sorts will be need some. So that's creating that. Which of our scripts touch which line simply by grabbing that line up.
Yeah, there is a patch metadata checker in the kernel source. There is patch metadata checker in kbuild, which is unfortunately separate code base for some reason. There is export patch and there is git sort. That's all the scripts that like rely on this value to be what it is, as far as I know.
Maybe finishes. This still have to be published. I mean, to be publicly known because there are people which are doing this by hand. You know, where
Even if you do people understand.
but still, yeah, have to.
But we have to try.
Yes, speaking of git sort, there was something that was discussed about git sort that was also not concluded. We have this out of tree section, which is not really out of tree anymore because the content that, like the patches that can go into this section are now restricted to patch mainline submitted or patch. Yeah, that's probably the only one that can get there because queued go to the maintainer section and which have version go to the mainline section. Yes, but then it's considered invalid. And there is inconsistency in some branches. This section is used, like for the patches that have patch mainline submitted, and in some branches, the patches are moved a few lines lower into like the there is a misnomer here because we call this sorted section, and basically all the patches that we have in series conf are sorted. You can't randomly take a patch from the so-called unsorted section and move it somewhere else. Like for some patches that it will work because they are really unrelated to the rest of the patches that we carry, but for most patches it will break the application. So really all patches are sorted. This sorted section is special in that that there is a script that maintains the order of the patches in this section and the commands that start the different sections and stuff like that. And it can move patches between the sections when the metadata is updated. And one of the things that this can be used for is that when the metadata for the submitted patch is updated to like reference the place where the patch is now queued into maintainer repository or its mainline, then the sort script can move the patch to the correct place. And when the patch is not in this out of 3 section, then it has been done by hand, which is an extra step.
It's not really because these changes cannot be done. So when you are updating them by hand, you cannot. As they are not. But we had this discussion so many times.
Like you have to find the git ID and put the git ID into the patch file, but you don't have to touch the series file. And especially if you want to use git sort for this, you would probably like have to remove the patch and reinsert it. That's quite awkward. Like, and especially like if the patch is in multiple branches, then you can cherry pick the change that adds the metadata to multiple branches, and then the scripts do the sorting automatically.
As I said, so many times.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with that is I think one of the problem of that out of 3 section is that people push the patches without git tags also there.
They can't.
They
it's
can't.
forbidden.
Without that, does it work?
Like you have to like if it you can only put patches that are submitted there. Like if it has git tag, then it's either queued or in the mainline section. But you can't put patches that that are patch mainline never. That's forbidden.
They are look at any C branch older than 5 years, and I can guarantee you will in this section find patches which have had patch mainline submitted for those 4 or 5 years.
Yes, it can happen.
Yes, I believe still the title not yet in the subsystem maintainer queue is working. I mean, if I change use this string, it will automatically put it in the out of 3 section. Is this the question? Or?
Yeah, I think you are correct or partially correct. I think it works when there is the git commit, and it doesn't depend whether it's a Linux branch or maintainer branch.
No, even without commit, if I just put this string in the reason or what's the beginning, and I remove the git hash and say not yet in the subsystem maintainer 3, it automatically create this out of 3 section, put some comment, I mean out of 3 comment, and then start putting my patches after that. And this happens automatically.
This is interesting. because in theory there can be more such patches, and then git sort has like no clue how to sort such patches.
No, it's working. On 6.
Accidentally.
It was always working. I don't know. It's working.
Like there was a time when this was not working and the order of the patches was random, and like if there were interdependent patches, it would break when merging different commits which have different content of this section. But somebody fixed it, and I haven't seen this break. Like it probably uses the order information that is there, like that which patch is after which one. Like it's not complete order. There is some uncertainty, but if you use the information that is there, I haven't seen it break. Like it potentially could if multiple people edit patches that are conflicting, but because very few patches are actually used in this section, it just works.
Some sense is usable for testing. Right now I have one branch which is accumulating such kind of patches, so I can build the RPM from this and test the resulting kernel. I don't know why we have to remove the function. Or maybe I don't understand the
Now, if I understand it, Michal is proposing to leverage this functionality and put every patch into this out of 3 section, or like every patch that is below it.
The proposal is to put patches that are intended to be mainlined into this section, so that when they actually are mainlined, the scripts can be used to sort them without like fiddling with the series file.
Yeah, but there will be no git hash there, so how it will do it automatically?
Like
so maybe we could do that if there is that git hash, then it might be git hash from some tree from the user that edited the patch. It might be from maintainer's tree, and when it's from maintainer tree, then it actually might be even the final hash. So what if the sort script actually check this git hash and checks if suddenly some hashes appeared already in upstream, and then it could move automatically like dispatches into the sorted section, and like we don't know any special like unsorted section for this.
We have the maintainer sections for this. If it has git patch and it's in one of the maintainer trees that are listed in the configuration file, then it creates the maintainer section for the patches.
So maybe I miss what the unsorted section is for then.
The out of 3 section is for patches that don't have git hash, either because they are in a maintainer tree that is not listed, and then using the git hash is not valid. And like often the trees are not listed intentionally because they rebase too often. Some maintainer trees weren't even in Git. And yeah, sometimes it's because the patch is posted and it's not merged in.
So I don't know if we need to put them into this special section. I would just like allow the insert patch, just check if the patch can be sorted, and when it can be sorted, it would just move the patch to the sorted section, and if it can be sorted, and it would do nothing, like either let it there or the user have to insert it manually somewhere. And
Yeah. The point of the Michal mentioned is that if you run the scripts series conf -u, then it will automatically update the tag and put to the sorted section of the main line if the patch is really in main line. And that happens even from the out of the tree section. But if you put the patch in outside of this section, then that will not be cared at all. So, so series sort checks only until the end of the out of tree sections. That's intentional. So that's, I think, the point that Michal wanted to.
And how does it know that it's the patch got into mainline when it didn't know the hash?
It has a git hash. I suppose that it has a git hash and it is actually mainlined. Then it's their scripts series sort -u will do that.
Like you refresh the patch because it's been mainlined, so you export the patch again with the new metadata and copy it over the old patch. Right? And then if it's in the section that is managed by the script, then the script can sort it. And especially this is convenient if the patch is in multiple branches, because then you can just cherry pick the metadata refresh and the sorting happens automatically for all branches.
And still, I don't understand how this script actually knows.
You have to refresh the patch. It doesn't know otherwise.
Okay, yeah.
That was my.
Yeah,
but you don't fiddle with series conf by hand,
which is like 120.
Yeah, but I think that it could be done like automatically. Like you could insert this patch again, and the insert script might be updated to actually remove it from the current location and put it into the current correct one or something.
Independent of this. Updates cities first remove the patch.
Yeah, that might also work.
I think the benefit of what Michal proposes is when there is a branch that consumes another branch, and there is like conflict in the series conf, so you can use the merge tool based on git sort, and it would automatically figure out this operation, or I assume.
Yes, it would.
So there's a question for branch maintainers who are maintaining these consuming branches, whether they prefer it or not.
Sorry?
This part.
It wouldn't, because when the patch is outside of the sorted section and move into the sorted section. Not necessarily. Like, yeah, it might work, it might not. Like, ideally, if there is no conflict in the outside of the sorted section and the patch is removed, then the change in the sorted section gets merged. It works.
May I, because you mentioned it, why is it needed to for those Git repos to be listed in those scripts when they are in some maintainers tree? Why why cannot I just put it in something like Git repo in that patch instead of having it also in the list in somewhere in the scripts? Do you understand what I mean? Or
yes, this was done because there is not an a priori knowledge of what the maintainers repositories are, and over time it was it was done this way historically, and over time it was found that it is a good thing because many repositories are known that they are often rebased and they are not good source of commit IDs. So they are not listed and intentionally not listed.
Maybe the reason for the thing you are asking is that the repositories are ordered as well Like when it's defined in the script, there is defined order for the repositories so that the git sort can order the sections for these extra repositories.
Yeah, so if I want to put something which is in another repository, I just have to update the scripts. And whenever the repository location changes, I have also to update the scripts.
Yeah.
And I don't actually understand the reason.
Yeah, the practical example of these rebasing repositories, when I was maintaining Sleep 15 SP2 before it was released, I had patches that were queued in maintainer's repository, but between the point when they were added to that sleep branch and the point where they actually reached mainline, the commit ID changed 4 times.
Yeah.
And each time it happens, the series sort refused to work.
Yeah, I understand that. But does it happen still? I mean, today, because
for some repositories.
Okay, so can we list them instead of opt-in list, having some opt-out list?
Also, the problem is the series code to access.
But yeah, you would list this in the page, something like Git repo or something.
It actually doesn't have to have access to these repositories anymore. If the repository is not among the remotes, then it is ignored, so long as you don't add or remove patches there. Which is like a solution for the problem that the repositories get rebased. Like now you can add the repository, but if the branch maintainer doesn't have it as a remote, then even if it's rebased, they can ignore it.
Which means that the series sort issue does not involve this.
It does it for the repositories you have.
Actually, I think we should be careful when you set opt-in or opt-out, because currently I don't know which repositories are regularly rebased or may be rebased. And I don't know if you said that we can trust the list of repositories, that there's a curated list of repositories that aren't rebased, and you are proposing the opposite list.
There is also another reason to have this list. The list is ordered, and if it's ordered correctly, then like if you have multiple maintainers merging from one another until the patch gets into mainline, then it goes always up in the list and doesn't like go down.
For example.
Is that what I understand? I just wanted to say, okay, I didn't assume any value about rebasing or not rebasing in that list. So maybe we need some extra syntax that would represent the rebasing status of the repository.
Well, if the repository is known to rebase more than once in a year or so, then Git commit is essentially useless.
Yes.
The patch shouldn't be treated as so.
So such a repository shouldn't be in the list that we have.
But also now, because the repositories that are not available are ignored, it's more up to the person who wants to use the repository. If it's rebased and only they have the repository, is their problem.
I think, for example, the SCSI or whatever the block things that is often rebased, but it's still useful to use a Git sort, because when you have multiple patches, the patch series of the 10 patches, then you want to have the sorted patches for these 10.
But if it's rebased, Git sort is so clever that it can figure out the new hashes.
No, then it's ignored. So if you run the Git series again on for that repository enabled, then I think.
It's so then it probably works, but
Yes.
it doesn't work for anyone else who doesn't have this tree.
Like it works for anyone else who doesn't have this tree because it doesn't do anything for them. At least. And yes, it's useful to have even repositories that are based occasionally, because like when you want to pull a dozen patches from the repository, then it's good to have them sorted in the order they are applied at the time you pull them, even if you need to refresh them later because the repository is rebased. How much time do we still have? 5 minutes. So if there is no other question, I think we can finish 5 minutes earlier. Like, I think it doesn't make much sense to open another topic. And to be honest, I can't recall anything related to kernel tooling that is an open question.